Ascension News: Angels, Fairies and Elementals. Today I want to share some ideas on the nature kingdom, which includes angels, fairies and elementals. As we will see, nature is very much alive, and we could call the alive and conscious kingdom of nature the Devic Kingdom. Also, our physical bodies are part of the Devic Kingdom, and I will explain more about all of this shortly.
At the end of this track there are 3 short exercises that will help you ground the material I'm presenting here. The term Deva was introduced into the vocabulary of the West from Eastern spiritual philosophies in the 60s and 70s. Deva is an ancient Sanskrit word which could be translated as being of light. And of course the word should not be confused with Diva, spelled D-I-V-A, which describes some celebrities or individuals acting as if they were a celebrity. Devas are the nature spirits, fairies, elementals, elves, and all beings working within the creation of life forms within Gaia. From soil to leaf to tree to stars, everything is alive and vibrating with energy. At the lowest level, they can be found in the atoms and cells of living matter. And at the highest, these beings hold the aliveness of a landscape, a mountain range, an ocean. As children, we are more connected to the playful energies within the Devic Kingdom, which is why children often connect and play with imaginary friends. As adults, this connection is broken through intense left brain education. It's interesting to note that the great avatar Jesus the Christ is quoted in the Bible as saying, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Many cultures around the world before the rise of mainstream religions practiced an earth-based spirituality, which saw all life forms on the earth as having an innermost spirit, an innermost guiding intelligence. Tribal cultures would hunt and gather food and would also be meticulous in thanking Great Spirit for all the blessings of nature. With the rise of mainstream religions, there has been a general movement to dispel nature-based spirituality. There are a few exceptions to this, for instance Shintoism in Japan. However, the general trend was that nature-based spirituality went underground, and in its wake were left the remnants of stories and fairy tales describing the relationship between humanity and the Devic Kingdom. As earth-based spiritual practice declined, misunderstandings and spiritual ideas and stories began to arise that had no real basis in experience. Because of all of this, there arose a certain level of fear, distrust, and disconnection between the human and Devic kingdoms. In the West, Christianity has been responsible for a great rift and fear in communicating and working with nature spirits following the witch trials. As if this were not enough, as the influence of religious ideas and dogma declined, the gap was filled with science, with its logical, analytical and mechanistic way of understanding the world. This created a further layer of disconnection, since we've been mostly educated to believe in only what we can see, sense, understand through our logical left brain mind. Contemporary science assumes there's no reality but material reality, that consciousness is a byproduct of the physical activities of the brain, and that matter has no innate guiding consciousness. Added to this, the general attitude of social anthropologists studying tribal people, along with historians looking at classical cultures such as ancient Greece and Rome. They saw that the unseen worlds of gods and goddesses, angels, fairies and spirits were merely the creations of primitive and fanciful minds. Not all scientists agree with this way of thinking. For instance, the brilliant scientist Rupert Sheldrake wrote a book called The Science Delusion, and I do recommend his work if you're interested in releasing the dogmatic grip of science in your consciousness. Because of these old and deep layers of distrust and disbelief, it may feel strange at first to consider opening to a realm that feels more fanciful, more mythic than real, at least in the early stages. In order to restore our connection to the Devic Kingdom, we need a new way of understanding, perceiving, and thinking about the natural world around us. One way to begin is to understand how our deep ancestors saw and experienced the natural world. William Bloom, author of Working with Angels, Fairies and Nature Spirits, says in his book, "Almost without exception, small tribal communities who live in a close relationship with nature believe in the spirits that animate all aspects of life. Such a belief is found amongst native peoples in the Amazon rainforests, on the plains of North America and the steppes of Siberia, in the icy wilderness of the Arctic, on the African savanna, and deep in the Australian desert." So, what I'm about to say draws on this ancient framework of understanding the Devic Kingdom, as well as experiences of contemporary teachers I respect and my various experiences over the years in working with them. So why work with Devas? Well, I believe that working with Devas gives us an opportunity to reframe our understanding of the universe and find new solutions to serious problems we collectively face, such as the pollution of our air, water and soil. Devas infuse all matter in our solar system with intelligence and aliveness. They infuse all matter and forms with divine energy, hence the idea that every place in nature can be sacred. In a forest or a garden, nature spirits infuse life force into every form that grows. The work of the Devic Kingdom is to bring light and beauty everywhere. From rock to human and beyond, for each level of being, there's a level of Devic consciousness operating. From the tiniest atom or cell within a life form, these basic building blocks or physical life join together in greater and greater combinations, forming more complex forms. As these complex forms evolve, higher levels of Devic intelligence operate to oversee the overall function of that form, for example, a flower, plant, or a tree. The beings working at the smallest level we could call elementals, and those at the higher levels we could call fairies and nature spirits. Of course, the names we give these beings are not so important. What is important is the understanding that these beings work at different levels. At the higher levels, Devic beings work with angelic architects of form, who are responsible for the evolution of matter, making small adjustments to various forms to optimize their ability to grow and thrive in the environments they exist in. For instance, elemental beings of light can be found working within the various parts of an oak tree, an individual oak tree, and at the higher levels, the nature spirits guide the work. At even higher levels, the angel architect working with the whole species of oak directs the evolution of the oak tree. One of the challenges in working with Devas is that humanity has had little regard for the Devic Kingdom, especially since the Industrial Revolution. Because of this, there are many places around the planet that feel devoid of life, devoid of fairies, nature spirits and elementals, devoid of aliveness because of human interference with the natural cycles and flow of Gaia. Devas will leave any area where there's been construction work or mining, for instance. This is why Devas are found more in abundance in wild places rather than in cities, which is why going into the wild can be so invigorating. On the issue of nature spirits and fairies being upset with the human world, my partner Liz owns a flat that was built onto the original house about 100 years ago in what was originally part of the garden. When she bought the flat, she reconfigured the whole of the inside, and the builders dumped a lot of building materials and rubbish in the garden. Once all of this work was done, there was continuous problems in the flat, lots of little things, including a leak through the wall that never went away. There were other minor maintenance issues on a regular basis, such as the boiler constantly losing pressure. Plumbers were called and could never find a source of the problem. They just topped up the pressure. There was also a high turnover of tenants. Frustrated with this, Liz found a lady who knew about space and land clearing. What this land clearing lady found was that the nature spirits were offended. They were never consulted or told about the work, and a number of them were inside the flat causing chaos. Remember, this was originally part of their garden. The land clearing lady took all of the nature spirits out of the flat to a tree in the garden, explaining that the tree was their new home. She spoke with them, explaining about the various building works, and apologized for all the disturbance caused. She also said that Liz needed to go and speak with the nature spirits as well, to apologize and make an offering of rose quartz in the garden. After this, things got much better. There were still structural repairs that needed to be done, but all the niggling issues ended, and she now has some very nice tenants who want to stay. It was around the mid-90s that I began to feel the call to sit and meditate in nature with trees. And over the years I've sat in meditation with many different types of trees, and during these times I first began to understand that not all of nature really appreciates the human connection. I found a certain sense of withdrawal, disinterest, and even anger within certain places in nature that I now understand to be about the destruction of habitats and the displacement of elementals, fairies and nature spirits. Not all the trees I sat with wanted to connect with me. Personally, I found cherry blossom, hawthorn, yew and willow all very welcoming and communicative. Hawthorn would open the way to powerful meditations with Devic beings. Yew and cherry blossom I found very chatty and happy to answer many of my questions. Willow was very helpful with emotional healing. For some reason, I've not found oak to be that communicative with me, but there we are. There were a couple of occasions where I was out with two of my granddaughters and decided to introduce them to speaking with trees. I remember the first time Eva, who was about 6 at the time, saying to me, "Grandad, we do not know how to speak with trees like you." I replied, "Don't they teach you how to do this in your school?" And she shook her head, which made me smile inside. Of course, I knew that this would be quite something new for both of them, but how revolutionary if children were really taught to connect with the Devic Kingdom. Over the years, I've often turned to trees for their insights and wisdom. For instance, during the lockdown in the UK in 2020, I was feeling quite cut off from friends and in need of daily exercise, so I went out for daily runs. On one of these runs, I went on a detour from my local park through a section of a local cemetery, and it was there I was drawn to meeting two really beautiful cherry blossom trees that turned out to be very interested in talking with me. They gave me so many insights, and their company made the whole experience of lockdown more palatable. As well as trees, I have had a long connection to crystals. When I began waking up spiritually in the early 90s, I began meditating with crystals and began to feel a connection with the spirit of these crystals. Mostly I found them helpful in clearing and healing my energy fields. Now my office is filled with all kinds of crystals and crystal jewelry. I still meditate with crystals and the Devic beings working with them, and these have been an increasing feature in my meditations on YouTube these past several months. I have found crystal elementals to be very protective. For instance, back in 2014, at a time I was going through a dark night of the soul, someone gave me a very large tourmaline crystal as a Christmas present. I mean, it was the size of my hand, really. As I unwrapped the gift, the crystal exploded into 2 large pieces in my hand. What seemed to be happening is that the crystal absorbed some heavy energies from my energy field and sacrificed its own form to assist in my healing process. And this happened a few times during my dark night of the soul. Interestingly, I have found that we can call crystal elementals in meditation, and they can have a very protective effect, even if there are no physical crystals in the vicinity. In shamanism, there's the concept of animal spirit guardians or guides, or sometimes called power animals. This is where we connect to the Deva spirit holding a whole species of animal rather than the individual consciousness of one animal being. I spent many years working with these beings, and it's interesting to note that it's also possible to connect with mythical beings such as dragons and unicorns that exist in other dimensions of this earth plane. And there are a number of meditations on my YouTube channel if this is of interest to you. All the elements of nature, air, fire, water, earth and prana or chi, contain elemental energies. I spent many years working with the nature-based tradition of Wicca, invoking the elements and the guardians or overlighting beings working with the elemental sprite beings. In these rituals, I would feel the arrival of these beings in my body. The elements of air can feel inspiring and invigorating. The elements of fire and water very cleansing in different ways. The elements of earth very restorative and supportive. The energy of chi felt like a flow of energy moving through me and around me. These days I know these guardians or overlighting beings as the 4 archangels of the horizontal plane and the 2 archangels of the vertical plane. All of my meditations and transmissions work within the sacred space created by these 6 archangels. You can connect with these 6 archangels in any of my meditations and transmissions on YouTube. It's important to note that the nature spirits and elementals can be found at work within the human body, in all cells, organs and systems of the body. Every human has an overarching body deva that maintains the health, well-being and vitality of the body. This body deva is very connected to the unconscious mind. Sometimes this body deva is called the body elemental. The body elemental maintains all of the processes in the body that happen without our thinking about them. The body elemental responds very well to beautiful rituals, incense, candlelight, poetry, dance, inspiring stories. Our body elemental responds well to being in nature that's infused with other nature spirits. And I know there are places in my experience that my body elemental loves, such as Glastonbury, which I visit twice a year. My body elemental especially loves hanging out in Chalicewell Gardens because here I feel the healing and peaceful presence of so many nature spirits, elemental sprites around the garden, in the meadows, flowers, trees and flowing waters. Body elemental enjoys being communicated with, but it does not respond that well to left brain logic, and it's repelled by judgment and blame. If you want to connect with your own body elemental, then you need to learn how to communicate with it. For instance, sending gratitude to the body elemental is a wonderful exercise, and we'll be doing that towards the end of this track. Most individuals have no idea that their body is alive and maintained by a consciousness that's very different to their own conscious way of thinking and communicating. Finding a harmonious and happy connection between our human, logical, intuitive consciousness and the elemental consciousness is key to a long, happy and successful life. And again, if you're interested in this area, check out my body elemental meditation on YouTube. So very shortly I'm going to be presenting 3 exercises to help you connect with the Devic Kingdom. Please note that any connection can be interfered with if you are in an overly emotional or mentally excited state. Stay relaxed, stay calm. Imagination is the important gateway to communicate with nature spirits. And your imagination embraces all of your senses, what you see, hear, feel, sense, taste, touch. Have a relaxed attitude and remember to have a sense of humor, because the Devic Kingdom has a great sense of wisdom, humor and play. So avoid taking any exercise too seriously. The first exercise is some affirmations to get you started. And of course you can write your own to help you open your mind and heart to this work. And here are a few to work with. I am called to working with devas, nature spirits and elementals. My heart and mind are open to this connection. My higher self supports me in working with angels, nature spirits and fairies. Working with nature spirits opens me to a magical dimension of life. I work with devas to heal myself and transform the world. I am connected and I have a loving relationship with my body elemental. Working with angels and nature spirits is part of my spiritual path. I have a natural connection to the Devic Kingdom. I am open to reconnecting with the wisdom, humour and play of the Devic Kingdom. So again, you can write more of your own, which will help open your mind and heart to this new dimension of reality, if it is new to you. The second exercise is around connecting with your body elemental. And to do this, lay down or sit down, get comfortable. Breathe. Feel into your body. And when you're ready, place your non-dominant hand on your sacral, your belly. And imagine through your hand you can begin to send the energy and messages of love and appreciation to your body elemental. Thanking your body elemental for all the work it does in maintaining the well-being and vitality of your physical form. You can imagine sending love and appreciation through your hand, perhaps in the form of a great wave of pink light going deep into your sacral and from there radiating out into your body. The third exercise is awakening the inner senses. It's important to awaken the inner senses, to also awaken the outer ones and the inner ones. For this exercise, pick something in nature you feel attracted to, perhaps a plant in your garden or a tree in a local park or wood. You need to be able to touch, see and smell the object for this exercise. So go and stand in front of the plant and tree. Reach out and touch it, perhaps a leaf or the bark of a tree. Notice the color, the shape, the form, notice the smells. Notice all of the feelings and sensations. When you've done this for a while and you've got really clear about the form and sense of the plant or tree, close your eyes and open your inner senses of seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling and tasting. Now imagine the plant or tree before you. Imagine reaching out and touching it. Imagine feeling the leaf or bark of a tree. Imagine the color, the shape, the form of this plant or tree, the smells. Allow this plant or tree to appear as real in your inner world as in your outer world. Notice all the feelings and sensations as you notice this plant or tree in the inner dimensions of yourself. So I hope this track has been useful for you. I hope some of these exercises can help open the way to the Devic Kingdom. And this track is offered to you with love and blessings, love and blessings.